Hello, Thursday. I've got myself a chart thing up, but only one. So I'll probably do this as a video and the one chart thing as a picture above it or below it. It is from the United Kingdom. Average weekly household expenditure on main commodities and services, and the latest figures in for the 2011 from the UK's Office of National Statistics. So let's start at the bottom. These are pounds per week. The first question is, compared to the United States of America, these numbers are very small. £60 per week, call it $100, are for the big ones. $100 a week for transport, $100 on recreation and culture, $100 on housing, fuel and power. Okay, those are the big ones sticking out at the top. I'm using them because just over 60 went to $100 quite easily. So we could ask ourselves the question, why in the United Kingdom do they have less money to spend than in America? But we're not on this occasion. The most interesting one on this, obviously, is health at the bottom. And it's under 10, £7.50. So about $12, $13. So that's $13, $26, $50 a month, $60 a month or something on health. And that probably involves going down to the pharmacy and buying corn plasters or whatever. That's obviously low number because pro rata, in their own way, the people in the UK will be paying income taxes to pay for their health care, which won't be in this. This will be after tax outlays. But the number is very small. Now, for health care, after the Second World War, Japan, to keep its country together, went to a healthcare system and a social security system, really to keep the country together after the huge cock-up that was the Second World War. And to a certain extent, that's what happened in Europe as well, especially with the threat of communism. It was seen as the best thing to do to keep the populations together, to go to a national central healthcare system, among other things. As it happens, I think it has turned out to be, by accident, the best thing to do. It is, I don't think there's too much doubt, a much best thing to have the country's healthcare run on something like the English system, the UK system, whereby the government gives you a minimum health cover from cradle to grave. And if you've got extra money and want to spend extra money, the extra health care is there for you to spend the money on if and when you want to. But for everybody that's born in the UK and others, there is just unasked for, as in you don't have to show up with a credit card or insurance documents, health coverage for most all of your ailments throughout your life. And I think that has been a lucky choice for countries in Europe and Japan. But we'll come back to it. Education, again, paid for by taxes, so I don't quite know what that number is for education. Maybe it's university tuition now or something. But basically, if you don't go on to further education, the standard education is obviously free, which is, again, obviously the sensible system. Right, and on the next one we'll see what I'm talking about, I think. Alcoholic drinks, tobacco and narcotics. Now, I'll show you what I'm talking about by I say now it's much best that alcoholic drinks, tobacco and narcotics. I'm not sure about the narcotics, but I've never taken too much notice of it, should be supplied by the private sector. Narcotics, too much of a confusion to go into. Communication, so that's a big number for me. I don't see why it should be that much, but if it includes the internet, I can understand it. Supplied best by the private sector, but must be heavily regulated by the government sector. Clothing and footwear, private sector obviously. Housing goods services, housing goods supplying a fridge, private sector. Miscellaneous goods and services, probably all private sector. Restaurants and hotel, private sector. Food, non-alcoholic drinks, private sector. Housing, fuel and power. I would think go for power. Electricity generation should be done through a central system, a government system. I think most I would tend to go for that. Fuel. What would that be? Fuel. If there was gas heating or oil heating, we might come back to that. Housing's an interesting one. There's a lot to be said for the government building and running an awful lot of government housing, because there's been this revolution of selling everybody a house for the last 30 years. But there are people that always fall through the cracks and are never capable of really looking after themselves very well, and they have to be put somewhere. And I think there's a good case to be made for government owning an awful lot of housing. Recreation and culture, presumably that's the arts. Again, the arts is very tricky. Obviously it should be in the private sector, but let's admit that the private sector struggles with arts. Basically, they won't pay enough to subsidise the arts that people want, so they don't want it enough. Arts actually isn't wanted that much. Okay, the people knocking, throwing, catching balls and whatever, that works, but opera and ballet and contemporary dance and all that struggles to survive and generally needs subsidies from, if it's not central government, then local government. Very hard to know on the arts. It seems that people say they want it but are just not willing to pay for it. Transport, there should be a government, either central or local government transport system. Trains, buses, trams. It should be put in place, obviously, because the regulation to put it in place by a private necessitates so much investment and work with local governments that the local government might as well put it all in. And if then it contracts out the running of it to a private enterprise and then can take the contract off and give it back again, who knows. But when it comes to transport, there should be a public moving the people transport system around the country, including very big rails laid down. Right, so where are we? I wanted to go back to health, but I forget why now. Health, yeah, the bigger question. The bigger question on health. If you're running an economy, that was enough to think of and answer questions on or comment on, but on the big economy, because we've bumped into this in the comments section. We are running into this generational problem of demographic bomb or something, where we're going to get lots of old people. Now, we can agree that looking after the old people over the next 30, whatever, how many, depends whether they have another boom now of having children, but let's say 30 years, could be a jobs boom for the younger people. So the old get themselves taken care of, and the young, and they move through their whole working life basically looking after the old, so they've got a solid job. But the question that I would ask here is that, I'd be tempted to bring Windy in and call it good for wealth creation for the country, but is it viable to run a country on a large percentage of the population looking after old people? Now, to give you something to balance it on, if, say, a younger person breaks their leg while playing football or whatever and goes into hospital, and it's mended and everything's taken care of, you can say, well, that's a good plan because that younger person will then go out to work and work and work and work and create wealth for the economy. If anybody knows what wealth is, comments. But the old people aren't going to do anything but make 4 jobs for the unemployed people, or they are make work jobs. If the old people weren't there, it would be the equivalent of just paying people to stay at home. That you pay them either to look after old people or stay at home and watch television. If you pay them the same amount of money will just be pumped into the economy. Keeping old people alive and comfortable is no better, except for a bit of a psychological thing that you think you're living in a civilized society, is no better than just paying people to stay at home. So if you don't want to talk about keeping the young moving into jobs to look after the old, is it good for the economy to just pay people to stay at home? And, well, not to stay at home all the time, but sometimes take their money down to the store and spend it and keep the money circulating. That's enough, isn't it? There's enough controversial stuff in there, or at least there's enough mind food in there to work on throughout the day. So I'll leave you with it. Bye.